Hello and welcome back to The Movies Made Us Do It. Me and Matt are back. How are you, Matt?
I'm very good, so Merry Christmas, and how are you?
Yeah, Merry Christmas, and I'm very well. Yeah, doing good. It's weird. It feels like we've done loads of podcasts in a very short space of time. Because it was delayed with the with Long Kiss Goodnight, so it's all the podcasts. But well, I think it's kind of one of those kind of amazing. We didn't do this one already.
Yeah.
But we're doing probably like I don't know. Would you say I kind of feel like arguably the biggest, like the most Christmassiest of Christmas movies in my mind.
Most quintessential, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, like it is.
clips of it appear in so many other Christmas movies. So
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of feels like it's probably certainly one of the most important Christmas films.
yeah, I think so. I think it's certainly stood the test of time. I think it's
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%.
that does have a great message. So
It really does. It has a timeless message.
yeah.
And when did you first see this? I'm guessing it would have been in the run up to Christmas or possibly Christmas Day.
I've got a sort of memory of watching it as a kid. So with my grandpa Jack, and I'm pretty sure. So I've pretty much seen it probably almost every year since then. So
it kind of. I mean, it is one of those. It's one of those movies you kind of. I don't know. You have to watch really or certainly I do. It's the annual film along with like Muppets Christmas Carol more recently and you know all of that kind of stuff. So
for me.
Sorry.
And Gremlins for me.
Oh, Gremlins, yeah, sure. I mean, I tend to alternate with the other ones, but certainly ever since I owned Muppets Christmas Carol on VHS, I've done that pretty much every year, and this one is always. I don't know when I first saw it. It was certainly a Christmas. It just feels like this film. Well, obviously 1946. I guess this film has been around always with me, my whole life, and it was just frequently on. I think. And obviously now I own it, so you know.
I mean, apparently in the States, sort of between this, I think the 70s and the 90s, because there was a weird thing with the rights.
Yeah,
they lost the rights to it.
Oh really?
Briefly, they got it back in the 90s, but between that period, I think every channel showed it almost constantly.
Yeah,
at Christmas. There was. I think you could probably one channel would be showing it at some point or another.
They just have a deal where they wouldn't watch it, they would put it on at the same time, but they,
yeah. So yeah, I think that you could guarantee that at least one channel somewhere is playing it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So let's get into it. We open with possibly. Church bells. Is it a wedding? Is it a funeral? Is it who knows?
Yeah.
But we hear the bells, and of course the bells will become significant as time goes on. And then we get this beautiful kind of panning shot, and we hear all of these, Christmas prayer.
Yeah.
Different people praying for their partners, praying for their husband.
They're all praying to help George Bailey.
Oh, is it all George? Sorry, my bad.
Yes,
I thought it was different people they were praying for, and then you get to. I don't know when you get to his kids. It's obviously his kids praying for him.
No, they're all praying for their friend George.
I missed that. Well, there we go. So yes, they're all that makes a lot of sense. All praying for George, and then of course we go up into space.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows?
Almost like a sort of
Star Trek 5 was right, apparently.
It's always got this sort of slight Twilight Zone thing.
It really does have a Twilight Zone thing.
3 talking galaxies, basically.
I mean, to be honest, this feels like it could be an elongated 2-hour Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah.
It feels like something you could cut down significantly and make into a Twilight Zone episode. You'd lose a lot of the charm, But you know,
yeah. So I think you certainly wouldn't get all the family, you know, all the wider wider impact to all the other people.
I think that is this film's greatest strength, is that it doesn't rush into, oh, Angel's here and he's going to show you, you know, because even Christmas Carol, that happens fast. Like, you see that Scrooge is a piece of shit, and then, but it's not long before, you know, we get the first ghost. And here, I love that. I mean, I want to say maybe like the last 20-30 minutes.
Yep.
And
that's what the actual book is. The book is It's the end. It's just the last sort of 30 minutes. Well, I say book. It's not even a book. It's a very sort of short story.
Yeah.
There's many differences.
Oh, I'm sure.
One of the major differences is that you don't get all the relationships. You don't get Mr. Potter.
I loved all that stuff. That's kind of what makes the movie for me, you know.
I think they did a wonderful job, and I think the many white writers worked on this, and I don't think at least two of them refused to watch it because he kept changing things, and they did not have a good experience apparently writing this.
You know, that happens a lot though. Films that you know, these auteurs kind of get really passionate about and start mixing things and changing things around. They kind of piss off the crew, and then it's like, but actually it turned out to be fantastic, you know.
The weirdest thing is it was basically a Christmas card.
Oh, right.
So the guy who wrote it, he tried to get it published, and nobody would publish it.
Yeah.
So he had 200 copies made, and then sent them to his family and friends. And then one, copy got to sort of Hollywood, basically.
Yeah. It's great. So anyway, the angels are kind of represented by stars and galaxies, and they're all kind of having the conversation, saying that, someone needs to kind of sort this out, because, well, I guess, I thought it was just the kids, but it's actually a load of people all kind of praying for this one person, this George Bailey guy.
I love the one of them says, "Who have we got to help out this?"
Yeah, they're like, well, we got this one guy. He's a bit special. He's like Clarence, the one we got left.
He says, Clarence. He's got the.
I love that he's called. Rabbit. I love that he's called Clarence. Yes. I don't know why that just makes me laugh every time.
It's great, isn't it? He's got the IQ of a rabbit, but the faith of a child, which I thought was great.
Yeah, and he really does, because he has that kind of childlike innocence to him. But yeah, I don't know why it just makes me laugh every time. They're like, "Oh, can we get Michael on the case?" Like, no, Michael's busy, I'm like, well, you got Clarence. Clarence is over there. He hasn't got his wings yet.
Michael's an archangel. He's never going to get into that sort of thing.
That's true. He's busy. He's a busy boy.
He does all the big fighting stuff with the devil and stuff.
That's true.
But and I like the fact that he's been, was it 200 years? He's been an angel class 2. Yeah,
because he says he's like 290 odd years old, right, or something like that later. And I guess he lived to the age that he looks. So and then he died, and then he's been an angel class 1, presumably within sort of
class 2.
But then within so many years has obviously got to class 2. Unless you start at class 2 and go to class 1. Right. Right, so he still has yet to get his wings, and they're told, they say, hey, look, if you do this,
sort this out.
You're the only guy that we've got left up here that's free tonight to do this. If you can go down and do that, then you will earn your wings, sir. So they're like, well, because you're an idiot, we're gonna give you we're gonna give you some context first, which is a great way to show us the history.
And I even the sort of the where he's like shows him the visions. He says, "Can you see it?" "No, I can't see anything." It's like, "Oh, I'll have to help you see the visions because you're
crap." Yeah, because you're so rubbish. No, isn't it because he can't see it because he doesn't have his wings yet?
Yes.
So they kind of really rub it in. They're like, "Oh, can't you see it? Oh, what? Yeah. We can all see it. Oh, yeah, it's because you don't have your wings yet. It's because you're rubbish.
You haven't got it yet."
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess we'll let you see. So yeah, we see George as a young boy, and they're all kind of sledding on shovels down.
Yeah,
Down.
I'll try that. Didn't work.
No, I can't imagine. The thing is, though, they look like coal shovels. They're kind of like
really coal shovels.
The kind of shovels that we have readily available in England these days. I can't imagine would work well at all.
I think most people tend to have, and I've got to think about the concepts. Spades. I think spades are the sort of smaller,
yes,
sort of less encased ones.
Mm-hmm.
Shovels have, edges that curl up. I think that's the sort of definition anyway.
Right. Well, they're all kids. I think they're about 12, or he's about 12. And they're skating, skiing down on shovels, and just as you think this is probably a really shit idea.
Yeah, someone's going through here.
Yeah. Sure enough, George's brother heads down. Harry, he goes down, and he looks like he's all fine, and then he presumably falls through the ice. It's quite clear there was already a hole there for him just to slide right into. But yeah, he falls through, the ice cracks, and of course his friends rush to try and help him. George dives in and saves Harry's life.
Yeah.
But at the cost of one of his ears. I think the one of the angels says he catches an infection.
Yeah.
He gets like pneumonia or whatever, and has an infection, and as a result, he loses the hearing entirely in that ear.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, he even at the start of the movie, he's completely selfless, even as a kid. Saving his brother.
He knows exactly what to do as well, because he jumps in and he tells the other kids to form a chain so that they can.
Yeah, I know. I was like, he's a smart kid. But of course, he is. He's into travel and adventure, and you imagine he's probably watching all the serials and stuff, So he probably knows how to deal with quicksand and ice.
He's got to be a scout, hasn't he?
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%.
I don't think they say he's a scout. He says he's like a member of he wants to be a member of the National Geographic and stuff. But...
He's got the magazine. He's like, I've got this magazine. You only get this. You can't get this magazine unless you're He's like, I'm a member, or I'm gonna be a member of National Geographic. Yeah. So he saved his brother, and then sometime after, he's kind of recovered. He's running late for work. He turns up to his work, and he meets Mr. Gower, his boss of the drugstore. He basically is like, "Yeah, you're late, you fucker."
Yeah.
But you can see he's
clearly upset and drunk.
Well, I like the way it's played off, because in this moment when you see him, you're like, oh, he's just a bitter old fuck.
Yeah.
You do see like a hint of tear in his eyes, but you're like, oh, maybe he's just like a drunk asshole, And then he is obviously working at the store. He meets does he meet Violet here as well as Mary?
Both of them, both are coming in. Violet basically says that she likes him and stuff, and she's all sort of flirty with him, and
she speaks into his deaf ear and says, "I will love you forever."
Oh no, that's Mary.
Was that Mary? Right. Okay.
Yes, yeah, Mary. Yeah. It's Violet. Sort of comes in for the shoelaces.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And she's all flirty and stuff, and she says, "I like him," and Mary says, "You like all the boys."
Yeah.
And she's sort of like,
Mary's like, I like this one though. I just like this one. You like all of them, so move on to the next one, please.
And she's sat in the chair on the stool, and she says like, "Help me down." And he's like, "Help you down?" And it's like, what is wrong with you? And this is also the first sign as well, which could sort of pretty much continue to the whole movie, that George is completely clueless when it comes to women.
100%.
No idea.
Yeah.
He fails to notice like many times lots of things.
Like the biggest hints possible. He doesn't see them at all. He doesn't understand.
And while Mary decides what she wants, she says, I think it's like a Sunday or something. So he's
making some Sunday. I don't know. It's a drugstore, but they're making Sundays and shit. I don't know what the fuck's going on.
Drugstores in America used to have bars and things in them and things like that. So they had lots of different I've never quite got pharmacies in America.
Well,
They're way
I've never
than they are over here.
Yeah, I've never visited America. I didn't know this was a thing. So you get your drugs and you get your ice cream in the same place.
Yeah.
That's just what you want kids coming into a drugstore.
Comic books and all sorts.
Oh yes, the ice cream is right next to the poison.
Yeah. And while he's scooping up something from below, that's when she whispers into his ear. She says, "Is this
into his
your deaf ear?" She says, "I will love you forever."
Which is weird. The first time I saw that, I always remember thinking like that's not going to be his deaf ear.
Yeah.
You know, like, and he'd hear it. But no, he doesn't hear it. So Mr. Gower is obviously just shouting at him because I think he shouts at him for like wasting time whistling. That's right. He's like, "Stop being happy, you fuck." He says,
"Stop. I don't pay you to be a canary."
That's right. Yeah. But then of course, George notices the piece of paper on the table, which I think is from the doctors or something, right?
Yeah, it's a letter. It's from I don't know whether it's the government or from just the doctor. But it basically says that his son has died from influenza.
Yeah.
Which would have been 1919. Yes, it would have been the Spanish flu.
Yeah. And upon seeing this, George like immediately, because he's kind of whistling, he's happy, he's joking with the girls, and then he's like immediately like just hands the ice cream over and just walks out silently. He's like, "Oh God, I need to go deal with this." He goes in to see Mr. Gower and he's like, "Is there anything I can do? Is there anything I think help?"
He calls him in for the delivery, I think.
Yeah, and he says like, "Is there well, no, I think he just walks in because he immediately puts the thing down and just walks in as soon as he reads the thing. He's like, "Oh shit." But anyway, he says, "Is there anything I can do?" And Mr. Gower says, "Yeah, you got to deliver this medicine." I can't remember who it was for now.
It's for some kid.
It's for some child, isn't it? Because later you see you see that he drugged the kid and he went to jail, right? In the alternate universe.
Kills him in the other version. Basically.
Yeah. So he's obviously distraught and he's basically pouring out poison pills into this box. George luckily notices this. And he kind of like, he just doesn't really know how to, obviously he's probably never dealt with death before like this. Or grief like this, so he really doesn't understand what to do. He knows he can't fucking give this child poison.
Yeah. But
Mr. Gower's like, "Do your fucking job, get out of here." And I think as he leaves and he's like, "I don't know what to do," but then he sees this is it Calpol?
Yeah, I think
like
it's
dads know best or something like that. Or,
yeah, it's a sign, isn't it? It's
an advert. I think it's for Calpol or something.
Father, ask father, he knows best.
That's right. Yeah. So he thinks, yes, I'll go and speak to my father. So he heads to the building, the small building and loan company, which kind of our first introduction to that company. And he's going to find his father, but he gets stopped at the door by his uncle Billy. He was like, "What the fuck? You can't go in there. What the hell are you doing?" And he's like, "No, I need to see my dad." And this is where we meet Henry Potter, who is just wonderful as like stereotypical business asshole.
He's
great.
I'm sure he's the model for many
villainous,
evil villainous.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Not philanthropist. Rich asshole,
yeah. I love his performance in this though. Like and
Lionel Barrymore was great.
And it makes me smile, even though he's such a piece of shit. It's like such an evil performance that it's kind of
it's
brilliant.
It's so evil, it's almost comical.
Yes.
It's so over the top that it almost verges on you just can't take him seriously, but it just sort of works. Especially
if the film had started in this scene, you would have assumed this was like a fucking Christmas Carol story and he was screwed.
Yeah.
He's like that kind of like.
Yeah, the angel didn't, the spirits didn't turn up to the right person this time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's always verges on the comical until later on when he does certain things, and you're like, oh no, he's just awful, awful, completely irredeemable.
Yeah, pretty much. So he basically ends up kind of bursting in, and he just kind of he comes in just in time to see Henry giving his dad. He's really giving his dad a dressing down and talking down to his dad.
Mm-hmm.
And, George being George, even as a kid, he immediately sticks up for his dad. He's like, you don't speak to my dad like that. He's better than you. He doesn't, his dad goes kind of like, you need to leave. He's like, thank you, son, but
yeah,
get out. You can't be in here. And he says, we'll talk later. So, of course, then he's like, I just don't know what to do about this poison thing. So he goes back to Mr. Gower.
mm-hmm.
And Mr. Gower is fuming. He's like, they phoned up for this med. I think they phoned, haven't they? In the meantime, they've communicated that they need these drugs. And he's like, I sent you there 20 minutes ago or something. And he's like, look, and he tries to explain. But Mr. Gower is just, he's broken. He's just lost his son. And he starts hitting him, and he hits him in his injured ear. And I think he says it's still injured, right? He still says it's still tender and still still sore.
And I think he says, I know I know you're feeling bad because of your son and everything, but you've made a mistake.
And he says, read the label for yourself.
Yeah.
And of course, Mr. Gower realizes his mistake, and then he completely breaks down.
Mm-hmm.
A wonderful performance by this guy.
He was really drunk.
H.B. Warner, fantastic performance.
Those slaps are real. He apparently really drew blood.
Oh, really? That was not.
No.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and the kid, I think, is like the fact that he's
continued to act after being actually slapped around the head. Yeah,
exactly. He's completely, just rolling with the punches, literally.
Yeah. I guess so. But yeah, of course, upon realizing his error, he breaks down on George, and says he's how sorry he is, and
he does that thing that like police detectives do in like movies where he tastes the thing, like when
he's like tastes some poison
drugs. It's like, oh, it's real cocaine. I just
well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because when you first see that scene, I was like, is he planning to kill himself with poison? Is he going to poison himself? And then obviously you realize that no, he's actually accidentally poisoning a child who's like, I got this prescription. He's completely buggering up. But yeah, so George vows, he's like, I will never tell anyone about this error or what happened here.
Yeah.
And I think Clarence asks, doesn't he? He's like, did he keep that promise? And one of the angels is like, yep, he did. He never spoke
Joseph,
a word.
I think is the other one, isn't it?
Joseph, that's right. Yeah. So he never said anything. So we skip forward a couple of years here. George is now like 54 and off to college.
That is one of the sort of weird things about this movie.
Well, they wanted to keep the same actor. I get it. Like I get it.
I think it moves to George being like 20 and Mary being 18.
Something like that. But George is clearly in his 40s. Like clearly. Those like forehead wrinkles.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, yeah, dude, I didn't have those when I was in my 20s. I do now. Like there's no way. But whatever, it's fine. It's still a wonderful performance, and he does act younger. He's quite good at acting younger. It's just his face, and this came out in 46. They're not doing an awful lot in terms of prosthetics to de-age someone. So,
I didn't even know whether you could de-age someone back then. I mean,
not back then. That's why I mean, I guess Lon Chaney would probably have given it a go back in the silent era, but
Yeah.
Probably not successfully. So yes, as you said, he's probably in his early 20s.
I think he's around 20ish at this point, I think.
Yeah. He as we said, his
a lunch store trying to get or leather goods store, whatever it is. It's trying to get a suitcase.
Yes. Yeah. And he's talking about all of his adventures because he's finished college, and then he's going to go on this massive adventure.
He's going to go travel the world, and then he's going to come back and he's going to make cities and buildings and.
Oh, that's right. Doesn't he say he was going to go travel, then he was going to come back and go to like university or something? Because at one point he says to Mary, he's like, "Oh, and just see what they know." And then he's gonna.
Oh, we forgot one of my favorite lines. The one.
Oh, go for it. Interrupt, dude. I think you've probably watched this more than I have, so I know it's one of your favorites. When he's
a kid, when he's serving the ice cream.
Yeah.
And he's talking about the National Geographic and how he's gonna. He says then he's gonna travel and stuff, and he says he's gonna get himself a harem and he's gonna have loads of wives.
Yeah. Which is funny because later on, he's like, getting married's fine for you.
Yeah.
Not for me. And it's like, well, as a kid, you wanted like 12 wives. So.
Yeah.
But, he's like a 12, 13-year-old, whatever.
Yeah,
so anyway, he's looking for a suitcase, and the guy there is showing him one. It's like a small one. He's like, no, I need like a big one because I need a big one to have all the stickers from all the places I go.
Yeah.
And of course they're really sweet. They've already got him one.
Yeah. All paid for and everything.
All paid for. It's got his name on it. And again, he shows how clueless he is. He's like, "Why is my name on this?" It's like it's obviously a gift, dude. Like,
and it's also the first, real sign that other people appreciate him. They've noted, they know how good he is.
Other people have appreciated everything he's done and realize what a good person he is. They want to see him do well. So he's, pretty much getting ready to bugger off. Do we get the meal scene, the pie scene now? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Where he goes home and we see his
dad basically sort of says to him, I'd like. Basically, his dad says, "I'd like it if you would do this," and he's like, "Oh, I couldn't imagine working in an office, in a stuffy office, doing what you do every day and all something." And you see this sort of the dad's like obviously he completely understands, but he's so disappointed that he can't persuade his son to sort of stay and continue the family business.
Yeah.
And I love the interactions with the maid.
Like, she's great. She's like, all children should be girls. The mum's like, it doesn't work.
Yeah. And she's like stood over him listening, and he's like, "Are you sure you can hear enough over there? Do you want to get any closer, sort of thing?" You can see it when he says to his father that how tells him how wonderful his dad is and stuff. It's like, I'm something that might surprise you is you're a wonderful guy, And he shouts to her, "Did you hear that?" And she's like, "Yep, I'm glad somebody said it."
And he's like, you're looking tired, Dad. And he's like, "No, I'm great. Don't worry about it. Nothing bad will happen to me this evening."
Yeah.
So they're going off to like graduation, right? Or is Harry's graduation?
Yes, I think that's what it is.
His graduation party, because he's wearing George's tux, right? I think that's what they say. So they're going off to the graduation party, and it's in the school hall, which is above a swimming pool, but it's kind of, it's one of those, like, I guess you turn the wheels and it kind of...
Yeah, I think it's an automatic. I think you press a button and it's got a key in it.
Very fancy for 46.
And it still exists. It's still there at I think some Hollywood high school. It's a real thing.
Just as well they didn't drain the water, because this scene would have ended very differently.
It's everybody upgraded.
But yeah, so at obviously they're at this party, and there's dancing and
this bit you're sort of basically introduced to
older versions now
of kids. You got the guy that keeps going hee haw and stuff, and his brother and I think you see Violet again.
Yes, I think Violet's there. Yeah.
And one of his friends says, "Oh, why don't I want you to come and speak to my sister? She, you remember her, don't you?" And he's like, again clueless. He's like, "Oh, I don't want to speak to anybody."
Not girls.
And he looks over and he sees her, and she, of course, she's still completely smitten with him. She's like been waiting for him.
Yeah, forever and ever and ever.
To turn up, and I love it. There's that poor bloke. He's there chatting to her, telling her.
To be fair, he's getting nowhere anyway.
Yeah,
in fairness,
she's not remotely listening to him at all.
But no. Read the room. This is not working, my friend.
He just turns up, and just goes, "Hey, do you want to dance?" And she's like, "Hey, wait a minute, I was like,
thank God."
And she's like, "I stop bothering people." He says to him or something.
Yeah. So of course they sort of rekindle and start dancing while this guy I think it's one of George's friends, isn't it, that tells the guy, he's like, "Hey, I've got a key for this thing, and if I turn it..." He's right above the crack of the opening. They're having this big dance above the crack, and of course they turn the key, and you get this wonderful moment because you kind of see it, you think it's going to happen, and then they keep getting closer and closer as they're dancing.
Yeah, it's wonderful because basically almost everybody notices what's going on.
Well, yeah, they scream, but then they're cheering because they think they're doing it on purpose. But of course, they're only doing it because they can't see that it's there.
Every time
they get a little closer
to the edge, the crack goes, "Woo!" waiting for them to go in.
It's fantastic. It's a really well choreographed scene, and it works really well. And of course, eventually they both fall in. But instead of it being that big humiliation, they both fall in together, and then everyone just dives in and just has fun.
Yeah, And I love there's the old guy who, I don't know whether he's like the mayor of the town or he's just the organizer or something. He's there going, "Oh no!" He's, "Oh well," and then just jumps in and
fuck it as well. Yeah, exactly. Oh well. Yes. So then
you get them basically he's walking her home.
Yes, and she's in a.
He's in. I think it's an American football outfit. I think he's got it, and she's in a robe.
Yes,
and they're walking along, discussing what's what, and how he wants to sort of see the world and do all sorts. They sing. Buffalo Girls. Yes.
And they do the wishing thing outside the dilapidated hotel.
Yeah, the house that she wants. She says, I'm gonna live there. I want that house. He's like, "What do you want to live here for? It's a shithole. It's like it's completely fucked. no one lives in this place."
Yeah.
Says, "But because you can make a wish. Because you have to break this window."
So he makes a wish. He makes one.
Yeah.
And she asks him. She's like, "What did you wish for?" And he's like, I wish to get the fuck out of this town and go see the world. He's like, "I want to go see the world, see everything." Basically, his dream has not changed since he was 12.
Yeah.
He's like, "I still have that same dream. Like, I'm consistent with that dream." He wants to go travel the world and whatever. And you can see she's a little disappointed because I think she was hoping that she would be involved in this dream.
Yes.
And she's not even mentioned.
Yeah.
So then she makes a wish. And I have a theory that everything goes wrong in his life because she made this wish happen.
That's always been one of those things.
Like she's is it her wish that fucks everything up for this man?
This whole chain of events by wishing for this.
Like he never gets to travel the world. Like every time they're about to do something, it goes wrong, and it's almost like she wished, because we know that God, at least, or gods exist and angels exist in this world.
Yeah.
Some like malevolent angel out there, like Lucifer, was like, "Yes, I'll give you that wish. We're gonna ruin this man's life."
And what I love about this as well is you also got that guy who sat on his porch reading his newspaper, and he's basically
youth is wasted on you.
Completely sort of, waiting for him to kiss her and stuff, and getting on. And the thing with her throwing the stone into the window, apparently they hired a marksman to shoot the window out when she threw it. but apparently she played baseball when she was a kid, and she had a really good arm, so that she got it first shot.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
it's a hell of a shot then.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I love that guy. He says something like, he's like, youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah, he's like, for God's sake, kiss her, will you?
Yeah.
What are you playing at? It's like this. He's just
Even this
taking too long.
Even this random old fuck has noticed how useless George is with women.
Yeah. I love that. Youth is wasted on the wrong.
It's something like that, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's wasted on the wrong people. I think you're right. I think that's what it is. So anyway, he buggers off, and she goes to walk away, and he stands on her on the
rope. Yeah, on the belt of the rope.
The belt of the rope. That's right. And she kind of stops, and they have a moment, don't they? And then she
you get he stands on it a couple of times, and he gives it to her, and there's a bit where she sort of like they come so close to kissing, and they don't quite make it, and then he does it, and then he steps on it again, and of course she completely loses it and ends up in the.
I love his reaction though. So she loses her robe. Obviously now she's naked. She hides in the bush, and he acts for a moment like she has literally disappeared from the world. He just cannot figure this out at all.
She suddenly became Obi-Wan.
She's gone. She's like, oh my god, she's fallen into the back rooms. And yes, he like picks up the robe and he's like, oh my god, she's gone. But of course she says, Mary says from the bush, she's like, I'm in the bush. And this is kind of the only time that he kind of gets a bit flirty and a bit teasy. Kind of, in a weird way.
Yeah.
Because normally George would have just given her the robe and just been like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry."
Because he basically says, "Hey, this is a great opportunity." Not the opportunities like
this. He says I could sell tickets.
Yeah, and I love it. She's going, "Oh, scream!" He's there's no everybody else is down the other side of the town. He goes, "I'll call for the police." He goes, "Well, they're the other side, and they're
he
not
says
gonna
they'll
hear
be on
me
my
either."
side. He said they'll take my side too.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Yeah, he's like, fucking
hell. But then of course this fun fun moment of humor is broken up as this car pulls up. I think it's his uncle.
He also says he also mentions about lassoing the moon.
Oh yes, of course.
Which becomes a thing for her.
It becomes a very big thing for her. This throwaway line by him really sticks with her. But yeah, anyway, this car pulls up, and I think it's his uncle. I think his uncle's in there.
It's his brother and his uncle?
His brother and his uncle, yeah. And they're like, hey, George, you need to come home now. Your dad's had a stroke, couple of strokes or whatever. And so, of course, he throws the robe at the bush and says, look, I'm sorry, Mary, I need to go, and leaves. Obviously, she heard this.
Yeah.
So it's not, and you see her come out of the bush with the robe on, looking concerned.
Yeah.
So George's wish to go traveling is scuppered by
not quite completely yet. At this point, he can still go.
Well, he chooses to stay to.
The initial thing was his initial trip was cancelled because
he needed to help,
and he needed to sort out the business affairs.
Yeah,
his father's business affairs
because he's the oldest son.
Yeah, and Uncle Billy is fucking useless.
Well, that is a running theme of this film, is that Uncle Billy is useless.
Piss up in a brewery. Let's put it that way.
Bless.
He's a lovely bloke, but he's fucking useless. He's kind of like Clarence. He's like him and Clarence. They should have a club together.
Yeah.
Although Clarence, is way more useful at the end. But
yeah, Clarence. I kind of see Clarence as more like the second. He's like the second Doctor. I think he almost uses silly stupidity to kind of get his message across. Disarm people.
Mm-hmm.
So he stays to obviously deal with the funeral and then get the business affairs in order, and we see a board meeting And against all probability, Mr. Potter is still alive. Now wheelchair bound and bitter as fuck. And he basically says, "Hey, I'm a massive shareholder here. And now that the father's dead, I think we should just close the business. Do away with it."
Yep.
Because
he says about how there's all these bloody poor, terrible people who they have. Why are we helping them out? This guy's you're giving him a house when he can't even afford the rent and stuff.
Yeah. He doesn't see anything beyond business.
No, he just wants them all to live in his terrible slums and pay rent. That's all. He he just wants the money. He doesn't care about the people.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's having this meeting, and obviously they all thank him for coming and helping out, and then Mr. Potter is like, no. So
George says, makes this sort of impassioned speech.
It's a great speech. There's a couple of great speeches in this film.
Yeah, and it's all about how people deserve to get a chance to have a home of their own, and to help them out when they're in need, and not just keep them trapped and stupid in their awful places.
Yeah, and this kind of sets up I guess it was already set up, but this like firmly establishes the rivalry and the differences between Potter and George. Obviously, we saw it a little bit when George was a kid, but obviously it's quite clear that this is probably Mr. Potter's like longest rival. Like ever since this guy was 12, he's just been like on at him,
Yeah.
And still is. So of course he wants to dissolve the company because he's got his own rival kind of thing going, and he wants to, as you said, have people just live in slums. And George is like, no, I actually want to help people. Obviously wants to have a business, but at the same time he wants to help people, which you get the impression is what his dad wanted as well. That's how his father ran things.
Mm-hmm.
So
he wants Uncle Billy. He says, Uncle Billy can do this
Uncle
job.
Billy cannot do this job.
Yeah, no, there's no way Uncle Billy can do this. If Uncle Billy was in charge of this company,
you'd already have gone under.
Within a month. So of course he basically, he leaves. He goes to the offices, and he's got his case, and he's about to go, and everything's. He thinks this is it, I'm finally going.
Finally, I'm going to the train station.
And then, he's got the. Is it Bert, the taxi driver?
Yes, yeah.
Waiting for him, who's like kind of his best mate, isn't he? Really, it's
between him and the barkeep, yeah.
Yeah. So they're sort of, he's there, and of course one of the guys comes out and says, "Hey, they've all voted. They've agreed to keep the company open."
Mm.
He says, "But there was one condition, and that was that you run it."
Yeah, the good news is your speech worked. The bad news is it was such a good speech.
Yeah.
They now want you to run the whole thing.
Valuable to them, so.
Yeah.
He's like, I can't. It's like, Uncle Billy, because if you don't, that'd be it. That's it. Potter will get his way.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. So at this point, he gives up on college and gives the money to his brother.
Yeah.
And basically says, well, that's me. I'm dealing with this company now.
Yeah, and basically the initial idea is he'll do it for 4 years or whatever it is.
Basically until Harry graduates, right?
Yeah, well, his brother's at college, and as soon as his brother finishes college, he can go
take over,
and then he can go to college, sort of thing. Is the idea.
But Harry fucks that right up. We see the day that Harry comes back, he has a big surprise. He has married a woman called Ruth. Yep. And Ruth's father, well-to-do man, has offered him a job in upstate New York. He finds out about this secondhand from Ruth's comment as she's walking away, and he's like, you've just ruined my life.
Yeah, she's like, her father's offered him a job at the glassworks where he works, and it's like, and she says it's like, it's not a lot of money, she says, but it's got a lot of prospects.
It's stable. Yeah.
And you sort of you could just see it in his eyes, and that's what's wonderful about
his brother Harry.
James Stewart's performance. Most of the time, he says so much with just little.
He does. Yeah.
Inflections of his voice and little twitches of his face. It's just like you can see, you almost see him dying inside. Well, he's like realizes, oh, that's it then. That's
me. Yeah. But what I like about this scene is that his brother Harry sees that in his eyes.
Mm.
And he does say, look, I haven't agreed to take the job.
Yeah.
I don't have to take it. But it's one of those situations where it's like, you'd be a complete asshole if you said, no, yes. you have to, stay here. So of course he says, fine, I'll stay with the company and you can go off and, have your life. Yes. And, I'm trying to remember, how does he end up? Because then I think we get to the ultimately the pre-marriage scene where they're at her house. So she's back from college or something, isn't she?
Yeah. So they're celebrating.
Oh, they're celebrating the wedding, aren't they?
Yeah, and,
that's right.
He's outside, yes. And you get that bit where the Uncle Billy decides he's going to go and tell Potter what for. But first, I might go home, and he sort of drunkenly points him because you point me in the right way. And goes, yeah, just go that way. So he leaves, and you get the massive crash of like stuff, and you hear it's like, I'm okay, I'm fine, I'm all right. That scene apparently was completely improvised.
Did he actually fall over?
One of the stagehands apparently either dropped a tray or knocked over a load of stuff.
Oh, it works so well.
And the actor basically, playing Uncle Billy, just ad-libbed the whole, I'm okay, I'm all right. So they kept it in.
Well, you got to think this is 46. You are paying for this film. Like, multiple takes cost a lot of money. So
times like that in this movie where things happen and they just sort of go, we're keeping that in, we're keeping that. And apparently he paid the stagehand an extra $10
for dropping something,
for improving the sound.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So Uncle Billy's off, he's there, and his mum comes out, and his mum says, Mary's back from college. She's been at college for 4 years, and she's back.
Yeah.
It's like, why don't you go and see her? And he's like, oh, I don't want to go and see her. He's like being all grumpy and stuff about it.
He's like, I'm going for a walk.
Yeah. He goes for a walk and basically ends up, and this is quite a weird scene, to be honest, because she's so enthusiastic about seeing him. She's got her little sketch of George Bailey, lassoing the moon for her, and she
put the song on.
Yep.
She puts the song on as soon as she sees him.
Yep.
He's like, how did you know I was coming? This is really weird. And she's like, oh, your mum told me. And he's like, I didn't tell anybody. I just said I was going for a walk. And,
And you've got her mother upstairs going, hey, I can remember which the He-Haw guy.
I love when she says, he's making passionate sex to me, mum.
Yeah, he's making passionate love to me. And she's like horrified. And then she's going, hey, that guy's, he's going to call you.
Sam Wainwright's calling.
New York. He's calling you at 9:00 or whatever it is. It's like,
he was like George's rival,
lovely.
Right?
She clearly hates George for some reason. She seems to be like the only person other than Potter that hates George. Yeah,
it's weird, isn't it? Now Sam Wainwright is like kind of a rival to George somewhat.
That's the one, yeah.
He's got a sure deal. He's getting involved in plastic, which is lucrative. It's a good decision. And so of course, I'm not sure if George already thought that Mary was interested in Sam or whether he discovers it here. But he's not too happy when he. Well, I mean, for a start, this whole thing is really awkward because she's trying desperately to get him to basically propose to her, and he is just not having any of it.
No.
In fact, it kind of feels really awkward, this scene, because it feels like he's not even remotely interested until right at the end when he kind of forces himself on her. And
he breaks down, doesn't he?
I
think he realizes that he's been so in his own head about how kind of awful his life seems to be.
He's not seeing what's right in front of him.
He's not being able to do any of the things that he wants to do.
Yeah.
But he realizes that, she clearly loves him. She's right in front of him.
Yeah.
And he completely sort of breaks down.
He goes to angrily leave, and then she's like, "Oh, that's Sam on the phone," and she answers the phone, and Sam's like, "Oh, I need to speak. I want to speak to George. Let me speak to George." Yeah. So she calls him back, and of course he's like, "I got this sure deal for you," which of course he doesn't take. And then as you said, they finally get together, and her mum could not be more unhappy. She looks down the stairs and sees them kissing, and it's just mortified.
It leaves.
Yeah.
And apparently, his performance in that moment, and later on when he's in the bar scene, which we'll get to, it's basically to do with him, his own self at that time. They just returned from the war. Stuart was a bomber pilot.
Yeah, because it does go through his war record briefly, or what happens to the friends during the war. Yeah. And his brother's done very well, right?
Well, no, but I mean, the actor, James Stewart himself.
Oh, sorry, no, that's later, isn't it? We go to the war. We get to the war after this.
Stewart himself was a bomber pilot in the Second World War, and he basically they pretty much now think that he had PTSD at the time. So
there was no such thing, right, at that point?
No, not really. There was no sort of.
It wasn't diagnosed or
no. So he this was his first movie back from after the war, and he didn't want to do it. Lionel Barrymore persuaded him to do it. Actually, he said, this film will bring joy. He said, basically, it's better than what he says. What's worse, dropping bombs on people or bringing a bit of happiness? Come and do it. So Lionel Barrymore persuaded him to do it, and he obviously he appreciated it afterwards. But he's a lot of his performance in this movie, I think, is because of the way he was feeling inside himself.
Yeah, so they get together, and we skip forward to their wedding day.
Mm-hmm.
We see them happily married as they exit the church, and everyone's happy for them. They're going to go off on their honeymoon. They've saved $2,000, which is an insane amount of money for the period.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they get in a cab, and the cab driver's like, "Oh, we got you this bottle of champagne," and I can't remember who got the champagne for him, but someone. Everyone loves George is basically the outcome of this. Everyone in this town, I guess because of this savings and loan thing.
Yeah,
they're like, these guys actually care, they care.
Beyond that, anything that happens, I think, in this town,
George has helped. He
will help with.
He's a pillar of the community.
Exactly.
Yeah. But on their way to the train station or the plane, the airport. That's the one. That's where planes go.
That's where planes go.
I'm very tired today. We hear that there's been a banking crisis recently, and
the cab driver says, I don't know what a run on the bank looks like, but if I was to say one, I think that's one.
Well, yeah, and
loads of people trying to get into the savings and loan.
Well, yes, it turns out as he approached, because of course he gets out of the cab. He's like, "Wait here, Mary. I'll be back in a minute. I need to go and deal with this." And she's
desperately going, "No, don't go,"
because she knows she's made a pact with the devil, and it's going to be bad news.
Are you saying Mary's evil?
Maybe. Not knowingly, but she made a wish, and it's coming true at the expense of George's happiness. He sees this crowd of people, so he goes to deal with it. He's like, "Oh, what's wrong, guys? You can't get in," and obviously lets them all in. They all pile in, and then he sees Uncle in the back, and he's like, come here, I need to speak to you. And he's like, look, basically what has happened is that Potter has bought the bank that guarantees the B&L loans.
Yep. So
he's basically like, no, I'm calling in all the loans now. You have no money anymore. So they've got no money to give out.
It's the Great Depression, it's the Wall Street crash.
Yeah.
So basically everything's going to shit.
And Potter's made it worse.
Potter's made it, basically he will buy everybody's shares for like so many cents on the dollar, which basically amounts to...
It's half, isn't it?
Them getting half of what their value is.
But, of course, in the process, he's not only doing this because no one would take that deal. What he's done to secure that is he's absolutely screwed over B&L loans.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, you'll get no money from them, or you get half money from me.
Yeah.
And of course, George pleads with them, and George even says to them, he's like, look, you know this fuck. Like, you know what he's doing. He's going to want you living in slums. And he says to one of the guys, he's like, you remember when you couldn't, when you couldn't pay the other month, we let you off. Do you think Potter would do that? Like, he will ruin you. He'll ruin you all. But of course, as you said, is the Depression. Everyone's terrified. They just want to make some money. They're like, I need money to get by.
Yeah. And the guy says, I want $200. I've got $200 in my account. I want it now, sort of thing. And they're all asking for their money. And Mary gets up and says,
we have this money.
Got $2,000. And he basically says, look, he says he does give that guy $200.
Yes.
He says that's it. That's my account closed. And he says no. He says it's not closed. He says you've still got your account with us. He says that's just a loan. He says you will pay it back somehow.
Yeah.
He says no. He basically says to everybody else,
what do you need?
What do you need to get by for
the
for
next
now?
couple of days? Yeah.
And people are like, well, $20 will see me through and stuff. And the woman that says $17.50. So apparently. The original was $17, and he was just supposed to give her $17. And again, he Capra pulled her aside and said, "Look, ask for $17.50." So she asked for $17.50, and you see his initial sort of like that wasn't what she was supposed to ask for, and then he goes over and he leans over the bar, the counter, and kisses her again, completely off the cuff.
That's
left
great.
It for the movie wasn't planned that way. I love those little things. They're so cool. Just how quickly he could react to, just keep going, do something.
Yeah.
It's
so
brilliant.
They get to the end of the day and they've got like $2 left.
They've literally got $2, and I love that they do that. We've got $2 because let's put them in the vault and see what happens.
Yeah. They put it in the vault.
Basically.
It's great. And they get out cigars to celebrate, and someone mentions like wedding party, and he's like, wedding, wait a minute.
It's like, hey, he says, I like it, he says, get Mary on the phone, isn't he? And he says, Mrs. Bailey's on the phone.
I don't want Mrs. Bailey.
I want to speak to her. Oh, hang on a minute.
And of course she tells him to come to, she says the hotel, right, doesn't she?
I can't remember whether it's a hotel or not, but yeah, it's that she gives the address.
Yeah. And of course he knows it's the old shithole that they were throwing rocks through.
Yeah.
And of course
we sort of forgot to mention that there's a sort of running thing with the taxi driver and the copper.
Yes.
They have this sort of like really thing, because we forgot the bit with Violet when we first see Violet, the older Violet, and she's in that dress and they're all staring at her, and she goes by and he says, hey, you look great in that dress, and she says, oh, this is the thing I wear when I don't care at all, and she walks off, and the taxi driver says, hey, wouldn't you? And George just goes, yes. So you get this sort of running thing with these two, and that they take him to this house, and they're putting up they've got, I think it's like advertising billboards, and they're
trying to find nice advertising billboards to put up in front of the windows.
All the places that he wants to go, which is kind of like
torture.
Lovely, but also awful in the same thing as well. It's like, these are the places that you want to go, and you're not going to.
Yeah, exactly.
But I love she's got a record player set up that's playing, and I love the fact that the record player is also run up so that it's got a loop on it which is turning the spit, which has got like two chickens over the fire.
It probably wouldn't work at all, but it's so wonderful an idea, and it's so romantic and just cute. It's great.
And it's like he's like avoiding like water coming through, and it seems to me they've got two rooms that aren't dripping, and that seems to be the kitchen, and they've set up a bedroom for them.
Yeah,
and I love that they're sort of got this lovely cozy thing set up, and the taxi driver and the copper are outside singing.
Well, yeah, they're stood outside in the rain, and it is pissing down. And
of course they're called Bert and Ernie, aren't they?
Don't they say, yes, they are called Bert and Ernie? Don't they say, doesn't the cop say, like, oh, we gotta find some nice ones, it's for their honeymoon, and this guy's like, what, do they want to fish?
Yeah.
So yeah, they hear that the record runs out as they see you, because they can see the shadows of them kissing in the firelight. So they start serenading them, and they got pretty good singing voices. It's pretty good. It's pretty good for for a policeman, and whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, is it?
I think this is where you see the house. Is it just
that's
Seppi?
right. We see what they've made of the house, and
yeah. No, I think that the isn't this where you get the Italian family?
Oh yes, that's right. Yes, he what are they called?
It's Giuseppe something, isn't it? It's the name of the bar.
Martini,
that's the one.
Yeah, Martini. So he basically, we kind of see that the business goes from strength to strength, and they're helping everyone in the town, including Mr. Martini, who basically owes them everything now. Yep. He's like, you've basically saved my life here, by making this affordable housing. Yep. And it's called Bailey Park, isn't it? This area. Oh, sorry, no, it's Bailey Park. That's right. And so he's like massively thankful, and then we get Sam.
I love it. You get they're all piling into the car, and a goat. And apparently the family is basically based on Capra's own family.
Oh, right.
We're immigrants from Sicily, apparently.
Oh, okay.
Capra means goat, apparently. Which is maybe why the goat's in the car.
There's a lot of animals in this film, because Uncle's always got like crows and squirrels and
weird raven in the thing, which apparently
and a squirrel. The squirrel goes and hugs him at one point as well.
Yes. Yeah,
just randomly.
That's the thing for Billy, isn't it? I think Billy is one of those like gentle souls.
Yeah,
animals around him. Which is one of those sort of like tropes, isn't it? The gentle soul that has animals.
I love it, because that raven's in the building in the B&L all the time. Yeah, and everyone just acts like it's normal. No one bats an eyelid.
He's in pretty much all of Capra's movies as well. Apparently that.
Oh right, that's interesting. Didn't know that.
No idea why, but
it's cool though.
Yeah. So we got this the family, and there's even a bit where he says the next door neighbor's like, "Hey, what's going on?" It's like, "Hey, I'm not going to live in this like shithole anymore. I've got my own house. I own it. It's mine. I'm going to go and like live wonderfully there." And I like you get Mary's got that thing where she gives them bread so you never go hungry, and salt so you'll always have flavor. And what was the third thing?
What was the third thing?
Oh, what is the third thing? That is so annoying.
God, I can't think now. That's really annoying.
That's completely.
You're right. There is a third thing.
Yeah, there's a third thing, and it's like it's a thing, and I just can't remember what the hell it is. God damn it! But it's whatever It's sweet, whatever it is. That's so bad. It's sweet. It's wonderful that what she says, and they all rejoice, and it's all wonderful. And then I think Hee-Haw turns up, doesn't he?
Oh, it's wine. Is it wine?
Wine. That's it.
Yeah.
Wine.
Sorry, I just googled it. I was like, what is it? Because it's quite a famous thing. I was like,
Yes,
there
it
we go.
is. Red salt and wine.
Yes, and then Sam Wainwright turns up in his car. He's listening to the whole thing from the street, isn't he, with his wife? And he says, "Oh, I made this offer to George, this sure thing, and obviously he's in plastic, and it's gone from strength to strength to strength, about to become even more of a strength when the war happens." But they offer George and Mary the chance to come to Florida. It's like, hey, you could come holiday in Florida with us, because obviously their place is out in Florida. But of course now, unfortunately, no, he doesn't have time. They don't have the time for that now. They're too busy.
Yep.
So meanwhile, or not meanwhile, I guess, around the same time, Potter is getting a little concerned. George's customers are basically doing pretty good for themselves, and his own business, which is basically screwing everyone over, ain't going so well now that there's actually a loan company in town that are willing to be reasonable.
Yeah.
The whole thing kind of relies on him being the only game in town.
Yeah, and there's a guy who's in the office showing him exactly what they've built over these last couple of years. So
it's like a finance manager or something, and he's like, look, it's no skin off my nose, but I'm probably going to be asking this George guy for a job before long.
So he says that basically all of these people have got houses that are worth 3 times the money they're paying for them.
Yeah.
I think in like materials alone, basically, he says, I think.
Yeah, this George is a terrible businessman, but it's it's really benefiting the customers.
Yeah.
So Potter's like, right, this George has been annoying me since he was 12 years old. It's time to deal with him.
He says he's been a boil on my neck for years. I think he says something along those lines.
Yeah.
And he says he comes up with a plan, doesn't he?
Yeah. So George by this point has he's got children now. Oh no, this is how he finds out she's pregnant. That's right, it's this point, isn't it? So he's asked to come in to see Potter. And Potter basically offers him a deal. He's like, hey, look, the business and loan, pain in the ass. It's a risk, it's massive risk. Just get rid of it. Come and work for me instead. I will give you, it's like a £10,000 salary or something. It's like an insane amount of money.
20 grand a year.
Insane money.
Which
1940 something.
Would be 270 thousand.
He also says, hey, you'll be traveling around the world. Travel around the world for me.
We'll go business trips to New York a couple of times a year, and you even end up in Europe every now and again.
Yeah, which is basically, he's offering everything that George has ever wanted, and financial stability to
he
be.
Even says, Potter says, I've seen you since you were young, and I saw how idealistic you are, and I saw that you were this chap that wanted to do all these things. I saw you wanted to go in these places, and you wanted to have a good education. I saw you, and I saw that you didn't do these things. I saw every time you just got, every time it was within your grasp, it was just taken away. And I was offering you, a shit ton of cash every year, just to come and work for me. And all you got to do is just get rid of the loan savings alone. It's fine.
Yeah, and George is kind of unsure. He's like, look, I need to think about it. Can I talk it over with my wife? And Potter's like, hey, you go and talk it over with your wife. I'll draw up the paper. Like, he's that confident. He's like, I'll draw up the paperwork while you talk to your wife. But George doesn't even get to the door.
No, I think it's that I'll draw up the paperwork is the sort.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's that like, it's a sure deal.
It's the thing that sort of gives him the kick that he's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Like this, everything I've been, working for these last years is like, I may be like poor as fuck, but this is not right.
Yeah, I mean, he basically says like, you're everything I stand against.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to sell my soul to you.
It was a bit like evil spite and a twisted old man who's like an evil spider spinning his little web and stuff.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, I just imagine if he'd gone down this path, Potter would have sacked him immediately.
Probably.
He would have been like, "Oh yeah, good, you're fired."
Kept him for a bit, and then offed him, got rid of him.
So he heads home, George, and he's talking to his wife Mary, and she basically says that she's pregnant.
Yep.
And obviously over the moon. And we then skip forward some time. We see that he's got 4 children. He's basically now forever stuck in Bedford Falls. His family's there, 4 children, wife, business, everything. He's in that town forever. The war, Second World War comes. George is obviously exempt because of his ear.
Yeah.
Harry serves, and I think he saves like a whole transport ship or something.
Yeah.
He's like a superhero. He's like
Kamikaze attack,
Medal of Honor, because there's like a Medal of Honor ceremony in Washington. It makes the front page of the newspaper, doesn't it? Because George is like walking around excitedly with the newspaper, and
Yeah, you get basically, again, like almost to sort of rub it in. It shows you, he gets this.
Yeah.
The Hee-Haw guy gets.
George is like the local hero.
Shitloads of money on the plastics because he's making canopies for planes and stuff. And
yeah.
Potter's, I think, is it the draft bill? I think
he's in charge of the draft bill, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, so he gets all that, and everybody else is doing. George is in charge, becomes like an air raid warden and all that sort of stuff, and things, and Mary, even between looking after the she does all the looking after the troops and all that sort of stuff. So you get the sort of everybody's doing really well. George is doing okay.
Yeah, but the point is though that George is doing really well. He just can't see it necessarily that way. Like he's kind of seeing everyone else's successes and not seeing his own.
That's the thing, is that he's got the great house, and which is kind of falling apart still, and then he's got the great wife and the great kids, but doesn't really have any money.
No, they're getting by, but happily.
Yeah.
But much like when he was kind of interested in Mary but couldn't see it, and she was completely giving him all the signals and he wasn't seeing it, he just can't see what's right in front of his face the whole time. He can't see what he has. He's seeing everyone else, and I guess the newspapers and everything else keep getting shoved in his face to kind of remind him. But yeah, so I think it's like Christmas Eve, and there's this big celebration for Harry. And they have a bank auditor coming in. He's going to be doing a routine audit, no problem.
Yeah.
Uncle fucking Billy. He's got $8,000. Now imagine in the 40s having $8,000 in a fucking envelope. How fucking careful you would be with that envelope. It would be like the most important envelope you've ever carried in your life.
When I was a kid, I was given, it wasn't $8,000, it was only like about £100, but I was like,
it's $8,000 to a kid though.
Yeah, I was like, I had to take it to someone's house, sort of thing, and I carried that thing like it was a fucking egg.
Yeah, right.
All the way. It's like I was like making sure I didn't hit anything, drop anything.
Yeah.
Like, avoiding everything that could possibly touch me. Like.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that, having $8,000 in 1940, 46, 45, just wandering around with it in an envelope.
Now I guess this may happen occasionally that he has to do this deposit.
Yeah, it's like the bank run, isn't it? You just
so there is something to be said for that.
But he does it every week, I think.
But it's a lot of money,
and
he's like on the way. He's like, "Oh, I'll just grab a newspaper." He's got a newspaper with Harry, and of course he sees Potter, and he can't help but
he starts taunting him, doesn't he, about how wonderful they've got it and how well everybody's doing.
Yeah.
and of course the idiot chucks the paper at him.
But the paper has the envelope. He's wrapped the envelope in the paper, and he gives the paper to Potter.
Yeah.
Like an idiot. Obviously Potter just like sees the money and leaves. It's like, okay.
Well, he's looking. He's in the office, isn't he? And he looks out of the.
Yeah.
He opens the door and he's watching Billy running around like a headless chicken, trying to find.
And then of course he sees that he opens the paper and sees the money there, and he's like, sucks to be you.
Yeah.
Basically. Potter's $8,000 up. And poor Billy. I do feel for Billy in these scenes.
Yeah, of course.
Because he is such a, like you said, he's such a good-natured, kind-hearted.
I love it because he's also, he's obviously massively forgetful, and he has this hat, like his hands are full of knotted string to remember things, and he clearly doesn't remember any of what any of them are for.
No, it's like he's put them there to remember, but he can't remember what they're for, so now he's just got things in his hand. He's like, I don't know what any of this means.
He's just wearing string rings for some reason.
Yeah, it's like me with my handwriting back in school. Like, I write it down, I don't know what the fuck any of that says. Yep. Made sense when I wrote it.
That's my film notes. I make film notes all the time, and every week I look at them and I go, okay, I have no idea what I wrote. So that.
I write notes, I type notes into Notepad on a PC. I never write until, like, Christmas. I'm like, I've got to write Christmas cards, and I actually do, like, a little bit of a practice write to first, because I only write a handful of times a year.
Yeah.
So I have to kind of remind myself how my handwriting
works.
Well, not how to write, but how to not make a complete fucking mess,
Yeah. I've written like a small child. I've always written like a small child, and I can't spell toffee either, so it doesn't matter.
Do you not find sometimes there are pens? There's like certain pens that will just fuck your handwriting up. If they don't feel right in your hand, I had one of those the other day, and I was like, I gave the card to my friend, and I was like, this looks terrible, but it's just, sometimes you just have one of those fucking pens.
Yeah.
It just made my handwriting worse than it already was, and it wasn't great to begin with. I was always jealous of the people in school that had like super neat handwriting. Because I love it. I love all that. Like,
I have no idea why, but my sister had beautiful handwriting.
Yeah, I love that.
Like calligraphy. It's like, how the hell did you have such great handwriting?
I would probably handwrite more if my handwriting was that good.
Yeah.
But it's not, so. Anyway. An aside. So Potter's got the money. Billy heads to the B&L. George is giving Violet some money to go to travel to New York and start a new life.
She wants to start a new life in New York,
and
of course it's one of those things. It's like, he's there, he's talking to her, bless her, and she's like, she seems really sad about it, but she wants to make a new life in there, and he gives her like extra money to help her, and she kisses him on the cheek, and it's like that moment where the assessor comes out and sees
he thinks, an affair,
big lipstick. It's like, wow, that could possibly be the worst time to come out there.
Well, it doesn't matter because all the money's there and the books are good, so it doesn't matter what this guy thinks.
It's great.
But of course Billy's like, George, could you come in this room and talk to me away from this auditor, please?
Yeah.
And Billy basically breaks down. I really feel for Billy a bit. He's an idiot, but I feel for him. He breaks down. He's completely,
Yeah, well, you see them running all over the town trying to.
Yeah, because he's like, did you pick anything up? Did you do any deliveries anywhere else? Did you do anything? He's like, I don't know, I didn't do anything. I went straight there,
And you see old man Potter watching them running around.
Yeah, he's loving it. He's loving every second.
Absolutely, drinking it in.
And Billy, George kind of snaps at Billy at this point, and he's like, you've bankrupted the company.
They're at Billy's house, aren't they?
Yeah.
They completely wrecked the place trying to find this money.
Yeah, it looks like an FBI raid. There's just stuff everywhere.
And he loses it. He says, "You stupid like foolish old man. Like
you've bankrupted the company, and we're gonna like I could end up in prison for this.
Yeah, you realize I'm gonna go to prison for this.
Yeah.
Because well, I'm not going to prison. You're going to prison.
Yeah. Yeah. So, George goes home and he's fucking broken now. He's like, I am probably going to. Actually, no. Does he go to see Potter before he goes home?
He goes to Potter first. Yeah.
That's right. So he asks Potter for a loan, basically, doesn't he? He's like, "Look, I need help." And of course, Potter's like, "Hey, all those years ago, I offered to buy your company. Was it years ago or like weeks ago? I can't remember now. But he's like, hey, I offered to buy your company and you had got out of this, and you said I was a despicable human being. You said I was awful. So no." And of course he knows as well.
Your friend? Why haven't you asked your friend? Why haven't you asked other people for help?
Yeah.
And he's like, he couldn't find the other guy. He's in Europe.
They're all scattered after the war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's, like that. And of course he's absolutely loving this. He's
and he knows that he's got the money as well.
Yeah.
He
says, you know what this means? He says, it means you're committing fraud.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm going to call the police right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a warrant issued for your arrest.
Yeah.
You're basically you're a terrible criminal.
Yeah.
And George is like, fuck, I'm getting out of here. So he leaves, and then he goes.
Potter's
home.
taunting him as he leaves as well. But yeah, he gets home and he's in a foul mood, and you've never seen George like this the whole movie. He's been, no matter what happened. Whatever bad stuff happened, until this point, he's
a couple of sort of hints where he loses his temper once in a while, but
very
never,
brief. This is a full snap now.
Yeah.
And his family. Oh, it's so sad because his whole family have just got this lovely Christmas thing set up, and the kids are just really sweet and being lovely. And
one of them was playing the piano, like constantly playing this song.
And then he turns up and he's like being super bitter, and he's like, "Why the fuck do we have all these kids everywhere?"
I know. I love it when he says that. He says, "Why do we have to have all these kids around?
Why do we have to have kids?"
Jesus Christ, dude!
Yeah, and then he shouts his daughter for playing the piano because she's playing the same thing over. She's playing it beautifully, by the way, but
there's one or two mistakes, but yeah, she's doing really well.
Yeah, and it is that I get that though. I mean, I don't ever want kids, and the kids, and I'm sure I did this when I was a child, but that child need to play the same thing over and over again on repeat is the most maddening thing in the world. It oh my god, it's so annoying. And of course in this moment he's in such a foul mood. He snaps, and I think Mary takes him to the kitchen, which is when he says, "Why have we got all these kids?" And she says, "Look, their daughter is ill. She's got a cold in bed."
Came home.
Yeah, she caught it walking home from school. I think they gave her a flower, a rose.
Yeah,
she didn't want it crushed.
I forget what she won the prize for now. But
sure.
she's won a prize, and it was a flower, and she's got it upstairs. So he goes up to see Zuzu, who's clearly his favourite.
Yes.
And the petals are falling off. So he takes the flowers, and she says, "Oh, can you put them back on?" And he pretends to put them back on, and he puts the petals in his pocket.
He fingers them, yeah.
Little watch pocket, I think it is. Then he passes the flower back to her, and he puts it in the glass of the water, and he says, "You just stay here and feel better," sort of thing, and he leaves.
Yeah. A broken man.
Yeah.
He heads downstairs, and it's unfortunately Mrs. Welsh, her school teacher, phones to see how she's getting on, because obviously she heard she was ill.
Yeah.
And of course Mary's like, she's doing all right, and then George grabs the phone and he just basically says, like, "What kind of a teacher are you, leaving a child out and doing all of this?"
Yeah, letting her come home half naked, he says.
Yeah.
cold and awful. And he's like, oh God, blah, blah, blah. And then of course,
Mr. Welch gets on the phone.
Mr. Welch gets on the phone. Yeah, it's like, yeah, you want to fight me, sort of thing? Come on down. I'll take you. You're not man enough to take me, he says.
George starts then, he hangs up and starts kicking things around the house. Kids are obviously massively disturbed by this crazy behavior. George just basically refuses to talk, and basically storms out of the house. And
you get that shot of him holding his son as well, like almost crushing the poor kid. Well, and you can just see it, his thoughts turning over in his head.
Yeah,
and it becomes too much. He leaves.
Yeah, Mary, completely confused by all of this and concerned, phones Billy to find out what's going on. And then while she's on the phone, the kids are like, should we pray for Father? And she's like, yep, I think you probably should do that. Yeah, that's
and because we forgot that when Potter asks him about his collateral and stuff, and
he says he's got no collateral, nothing.
Got nothing but a life insurance
isn't it like £200 or something?
I think it's like $2,000, but basically it's like 500 whatever it is, or like sort of thing. And of course he says to him, like, you're worth more to your family dead than you are alive. It's like, wow.
Well, and that sticks with him.
Yeah,
that sticks with him.
So he goes off to Martini's.
Yeah, so the small town situation, the word is spreading. But he heads to the bar. And in the tavern, he's kind of drinking, and he does pray for guidance as he drinks. His friends are there, and Mr. Welch is there.
Yeah,
who just having a drink, and they say George's name out loud. It's like, who?
This is George Bailey.
He's like, George Bailey, my friend, George Bailey. And Mr. Welsh is like, you absolute twat. He's like, my wife hasn't stopped crying since you spoke to her.
Your idiot children, basically, he says.
Yeah. And of course he punches George and splits his lip.
Yeah.
There's another scene Nick, the bartender, immediately kicks him out. He's like, you hit my best friend, get out. You're out there.
You get that scene of him when he's doing the praying at the bar.
Yeah.
And they didn't. So the scene where you get a close up of his face, and it's you can see all the stuff just churning over him. It's a wonderful.
Yeah, it's
shot.
Brilliant. Yeah.
But it's that shot wasn't a tight thing. It wasn't zoomed in. They did that afterwards, which is why that shot is so grainy. Because they blew it up.
Right.
So it wasn't actually a zoom in. It was they did it afterwards, which is so. But the shot of him is just. Everything churning in his face is just
it's amazing. It's an amazing shot. George finally leaves. His friends are like, go and rest. Just. Or sorry, they say he should stay in the bar and rest, and he's like, no, forget it. So drunk, he gets in his car and he drives towards the bridge.
And you also notice what I like as well is George is still basically driving the same car.
Yes, yeah. He's never been able to upgrade.
No,
like they've always broken even, right?
Yeah.
Like they've never lost, but they've never gained any money. They're just making do the whole time. It's a lovely touch that with the car, actually.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's little things like that you're like, oh, that's really nice. He's always never been able to afford a new car, so he's just kept the same one. Anyway, it's heavy snow now because it's Christmas. So he accidentally drives into a tree, and the homeowner is not like, are you okay? He's like, how dare you hit this tree? It's apparently a very important tree.
It's the oldest tree in town.
Yeah. And George just basically just doesn't care. He opens the car door and just walks away while the guy keeps shouting at him, and he's like, whatever.
Yeah. Hey, get rid of this car.
Yeah. And finally, he reaches the bridge. And obviously he intends to kill himself. I think we get some of the quotes, might be what he's driving, from different people, and you hear Potter again say, hey, you're worth more dead than alive, and and whatnot. And he's kind of going through his head. He's going to jump. But just as he's about to jump, Clarence basically jumps in the river himself. He comes to Earth and jumps in the river himself. And of course, George being George, even in his darkest moment, willing to spend his final moments helping someone, he
doesn't
dives
hesitate. He jumps in to save him
immediately. Yeah. So he rescues Clarence, and they end up back in the shack of the toll booth. Yeah. And I
love that
that guy's great.
His expressions are so
he's just like, what is going on?
Clarence go on about, hey, I'm an angel, and this guy's like, okay, this dude's fucking nuts.
He's like, I've got to work this goddamn shift on Christmas Eve. I'm cold, I'm wet, I'm fed up, I can't see my family because I got to do this goddamn job. And now this asshole's here talking about being a second-class angel and not having his wings, and it's great. The guy's like, what? Because he starts putting on his robes, doesn't he? And he's like, my wife got these for me 200 years ago.
What I died in, basically.
Yeah. And he's like, what the hell were you doing? And he was like, well, I had to save George here from committing suicide. And George is like, what are you talking about? I jumped in to save you. And he's like, I did that to stop you. You didn't jump. You were going to kill yourself, and you didn't, did you? So it worked.
And he says, all for $8,000. You're going to kill yourself for $8,000. What a waste of a life. And he's like, how do you know this stuff? How do you know like the details that he knows? How is that? And
he also says, like, I'm worth more dead.
Yeah.
Clarence, is very open about his divine nature. He just says it because it's just a matter of fact to him. He's never been on. You get the impression he's not been on Earth for 200 years or so he just doesn't know how things work.
Yeah,
and he probably quite naive in life as well. So
because he was, as he said, they think he's got this. He's an idiot, and he's been there for 200 years. I always got this feeling that stuff he'd done, he like fucked up slightly.
Yeah,
like in 200 years, the jobs he'd been given didn't quite turn out, and this feels like a last-ditch effort to get him to first class.
I do kind of like that, although it does seem, I think Clarence cares, because it seems like Clarence cares.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But there are a few times where like George is like, why are you doing this? And Clarence is just like, it's my job, dude. Like, I need to do a job to get my wings. It's like, I just, come on, can you just not kill yourself, because then I'll get promoted? Would that be alright? Could you just not die? Die after I've got my wings. Die tomorrow.
Yeah, if you just do that.
Just hold out for one night.
Live till Tuesday, you'll be fine.
Yeah. But yeah, so eventually George is like, do you know what? It was a mistake to leave the bar. Do you want to come for a drink, Angel Man? And they do. They head down. Oh no, sorry. They have the conversation. Sorry.
They have the conversation. He says, I'd have been better off if I never.
He says, I'm worth more dead. And then he's like, oh, no, you're not. And he's like, oh no, you're right. Actually, I'd be better off if I'd never existed at all.
Yeah.
And
like,
then he kind of,
hey, that's a bloody good idea. And
he's talking to the other angels, right? He's like, oh wait a minute, what do you reckon, guys?
You don't hear you don't hear the replies, but he's like, yeah, that'll work.
Yeah.
And I like that you get the sort of the wind blowing and the door open and all the things. Well, you didn't have to go that far.
Yeah, but he says, oh, the snow's stopped, and he's like, oh my god, I can hear out of my other ear, and he's like, it must have been falling in that freezing cold water, and it's like, I don't think that's how that works, dude, but fine. Yeah. So he can hear again. His lips no longer bleeding.
Yeah, his lips cleared up.
All very odd. But as Clarence says, he says, oh, you will see some strange things now. You will see a lot of strange things. So he says, let's go to the bar. And they head back to his car, but it's not there. Car's not there, and the tree is fine. And the guy is coming home, and he says, where's my car? He's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, the car, I hit your tree. And the guy kind of like nervously looks at the tree. He's like, "Oh, you scared me. Like, what? The tree's fine. Like, what are you crazy people talking about?" And it just goes in. And he's like, "Where's my car?" And of course, Clarence is like, "You never drove here. Your car doesn't exist. Like, you know, it's probably with someone else."
Yeah.
But they end up walking, I guess, to the tavern. And he doesn't notice the sign, does he? He notices it on the way out, not on the way in.
No, he doesn't notice that it's not martinis anymore.
Yeah. But it's Nick's place, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that instead.
Yeah.
It's called Nick's instead of martinis.
Yeah.
So they go in. He orders. George orders a drink, and much to Nick's chagrin, Clarence just cannot. He's like, "I haven't ordered a drink in 200 years. What do people drink?" And he starts
sort of punch, and he's like, "Yeah, you're not."
Yeah, he says, "Oh no, it's not cold enough for that."
I like mulled wine. It's like, "Look, pal." It's like
it's like this is a working man's pub. We're here to get people drunk as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
like just liquor, please.
I love the fact that like Nick has gone from being sort of like what seemed to be a normal, lovely sort of bartender sort of guy to being like the worst sort of gangster gin joint barman.
Yeah,
and everybody in that place is either looks like they're a whore or a gangster.
Yeah, it's like without George in their lives, everyone turned to crime.
Yeah,
basically. Which, I mean, you say that, but then it's like, well, without him, no affordable housing, slums.
Yeah,
you know, crime goes along with poverty. So it's exaggerated, but
yeah, it's completely over the top.
But it works, you know.
Even one of the things we'll get to in a minute, which is like, which still it actually makes me laugh when he does it. But we'll get there.
Okay.
So you get them. You know, it's all going a bit wrong, and he doesn't understand why Nick's acting like he's acting, and then of course the drugstore guy comes in.
Yeah.
And you know he's wearing tattered clothes, and he's obviously got newspaper filled, you know, to keep warm in his, you know, stuffed in his clothes. And of course Nick's like, "Hey, you know, what I ever told you about coming over and panhandling, and get the hell out." And he's like, "Hey, what's going on? Why are you treating him like that? What's it he say?" Because that guy, he's like did 20 years for
poisoning a kid.
Yeah. And he's like, if you know him, then you must be a criminal as well. Get the fuck out, basically.
Yeah. He's like, "Oh, now you've given me like one final reason to get rid of you assholes. Like that's what you do, you know."
Just is like, "I don't understand that. I saved him. He didn't. That kid didn't die." He's like, "Well, no, you weren't here to do that. So he poisoned the kid. The kid died."
Yeah, he killed a kid because George didn't help. Yeah. So, you know, George kind of they get kicked out, and he then realizes the name of the bar has changed as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Clarence is like, "Look, you don't exist in this reality."
Yeah.
And George says, "Well, if I wasn't born, like, you know, how am I interacting? Who am I?" And you know, Clarence says, like, you are nobody. You have no identity in this reality. You're just a random stranger to people, basically.
Yeah. He's got nothing in his pocket, and you know.
He's got nothing, no identification.
Doesn't even have Zuzu's petals anymore.
That's right. Yeah. And he says they don't exist.
He wants to go, doesn't he? He says he wants to go home. So
yeah, well, I love when Clarence says, "You've been given a great gift, the chance to see the world, what the world would be like without you."
Yeah.
So George is kind of continuing his denial of what's happening, but he sees Pottersville.
Yep.
Which I often wondered. I wonder whether that's like where they got the inspiration for Biff. in
Oh,
Back to the Future Part 2?
absolutely.
Because it's very much the same kind of thing, isn't it?
This whole, you know,
the whole redevelopment area thing is very, you know.
Every building is like a bar or
a
dance hall, or and it's, you know, everyone's a fucking. It looks like they're a gangster. Everyone just looks like a wrong un. And you know, it's totally where
Back to the Future Part 2.
Back to the Future 2 comes from. Yeah, absolutely.
Very much. So it's just a sleazy hellhole now. And he notices that the movie theater's not there, the Emporium is not there, and of course he goes to B&L.
Yeah,
and it's not there, and there's police everywhere dealing with, you know, crime.
Drugs and all sorts.
Yeah,
and you see Lila getting pushed into the back of the police van.
Yeah, they're taking her away from a brothel, right?
Yeah,
and the brothel is basically the B&L. He's like, where's the buildings and loan? Like, it's meant to be here. And he says, hey, that's Violet. I know her. Like, what are you doing? You know, because obviously the police are taking her away and stuff. And he basically ends up hailing a cab. And of course, it's Ernie.
The copper says the savings and loan hasn't been open for ages. It's 6-9 years ago.
I guess it would have gone with his father, right? So because Harry dies. So he hails a cab, and it's Ernie. Ernie has no idea who he is. And of course he's like, well, look, just go to this address. And Ernie's like, but that's like an abandoned ruin of a house. Like, why? But fine, okay.
Well, he gets the attention of the copper as he's driving along, sort of like, you know, follow me, because this guy's a fucking loony.
Yeah, I like that even in this reality they have a friendship.
Yeah.
George kind of asks Ernie about his life while they're driving. And he says, you know, his wife left him, and he lives alone in Potter's Field. So they get to the house, and obviously, you know, George can't believe it.
It's still the wreck.
It never became anything. He's calling out for his family. Clarence appears there. But I like when Bert turns up, he comes to arrest them.
Yeah.
And then Clarence basically vanishes.
He's trying to arrest them. He gets George run. He's like, run away, George! And he wrestles. The copper wrestles him to the ground, like trying to cuff him, and he disappears. Yeah. Hey, where'd he go? And he's like, okay, I'm off.
You can see on his face, he's like,
I've had enough.
I have lost my mind. Fine. George finally ends up going to his mother's house. And it's a boarding house, obviously, as it was.
Boarding house, isn't it? Yeah.
It was a boarding house anyway, wasn't it? But now it's like a much more dilapidated boarding house. And she doesn't recognize him and tells him to go away because she's no idea who he is. And George, you know, kind of worrying, mentions Uncle Billy. And she says, like, Billy's been in the insane asylum since B&L went out of business. So basically since, I guess, his dad died. Drove poor Billy crazy, and he ended up in an insane asylum. But you know, he's kind of just... I guess George is still in denial about all of it. I guess he's like, "What? Am I just dead or something? Like, what's going on? This is like bizarre." But he does go to Martini's house in Bailey's Park with Clarence. And of course, what they find there is a cemetery. Clarence points out a certain grave. And of course, it's Harry.
Yeah.
It's his brother, and his brother, you know, broke the ice and drowned at the age of 9. Of course, George becomes incensed, and he says, like, that's a lie. My brother was a war hero. You know, he won like the Medal of Honor, saved lives in the line of duty.
Yeah, he saved that like transport full of troops. It's like, no, didn't. That transport went under.
Everyone on that transport died because no one was there to save them. Because you weren't there to save Harry, he wasn't there to save the transport. And that's where you get the line of the movie, isn't it? Because he's like, "Oh, you see, George, you had a wonderful life.
Yeah.
Don't you see what a mistake it would be to throw it away?" And of course, George's first thoughts now are with Mary.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "I want to see Mary." And Clarence says, "Like, look, she works at the library."
First of all, he says, "I can't tell you. That's not how it works. I'm not supposed to tell you where she is."
Yeah, and then he eventually says, like, she never married. She's just at the library. She works at the library, and of course, George heads there,
closing up the library right about now.
Yes, when some creepy weirdo comes up to her, she starts grabbing her, and trying to kiss her and embrace her, and she's like, "What are you doing?" She screams, obviously, and
it is quite funny that like the worst thing could possibly happen. She's a librarian on
oh my goodness. She looks like she's doing all right for herself, to be fair.
Yeah, she didn't look too that bad.
No, she's having a pretty good life. He runs after her because I think she like runs into like a nightclub or something, doesn't she?
Yeah.
And the crowd there are obviously like, because they think like he's just attacking this woman that they know from the town.
She's screaming, isn't she?
Yeah.
They pull her off. Of course, the copper turns up again, and this is what I love. He basically makes a run for it. The copper fucking just starts shooting at him. He's like, Jesus Christ! That's what I love. That makes me laugh every time. He's like, okay,
yeah, it's like
he's a lunatic. Shoot him.
It's like Grand Theft Auto AI.
Yeah.
Police just shoot you for,
just that citizen. Quick, murder him.
Yeah. It's like, oh my god, you just broke into that car. Shoot. Luckily, Bert misses.
Luckily, was a terrible shot.
Yeah. He pursues them in the squad car. George runs to the bridge where he was, going to commit suicide, and he calls for Clarence to help him. He says he wants to live again, and calls to God basically to bring him back. The alternate universe comes to an end, and he comes back to real life. But of course, Bert turns up. In the real reality, Bert turns up anyway. So of course he thinks. He's like, "Oh God, you're gonna arrest me and whatever." And
you again.
And Bert's like, "I know. I saw you plow your car into the tree. Like, I was really worried. I just wanted to make sure you were okay because I thought you might jump. I saw you were bleeding and whatever." And of course, George is over the moon. He's like, "Oh my God, the car, the tree." And he checks for the petals, doesn't he? It's one of the first things he does. He checks for the petals. Petals are there. He's like, "Oh, everything's great." And he get this wonderful scene where he runs through the town.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, hello, movie theater. Hello, BNL.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Merry Christmas."
Yeah. And he gets
a scene that has been used in many movies.
Yeah.
That I'm sure it's in Gremlins, isn't it?
It might well be, actually.
I'm sure it's in Gremlins. I know it gets like put up in loads of Christmas movies.
Yeah. So he even doesn't he runs past Potter's place and wishes him a Merry Christmas as well.
Yeah,
and Mr. Potter's like, "Merry Christmas from prison." So he gets home, and the officials are there, and he's like, "Oh, Merry Christmas! I guess you're here to arrest me. It's fine, whatever. I just want to see the kids."
I'm so happy I'm going to prison.
yeah. And they're like, "What is going on?" And of course he sees Mary and his kids, and he embraces them. He is over the moon to see Mary, and he's just kissing her, and obviously she's trying to tell him something. She's like, "But like, let me talk," and he just keeps kissing her, and he's just super happy.
Billy comes in.
Uncle Billy,
with a load of other people, and he says, "It was so wonderful. Word got out that we were in trouble, and everybody came out to help.
Well, this was the thing, right? Because Potter said everyone will hate you for this.
Yes.
You're not going to be Mr. Popular anymore. You're not going to be the one that everyone loves. Everyone's going to hate you for this. You stole their money.
You're a criminal.
Yeah.
No one's going to want to help you out now.
And of course, that's not the case at all.
No, they've got this basket full of cash.
Yeah, everyone in the town, apart from the guy you hit the tree, presumably, he did not donate. Everyone else in the town has contributed whatever they could. It's basically it's like a basket of cash, jewelry, everything they can find. They also get Sam. Sam contacts them by a telegram.
Yeah, he says his company's willing to transfer 20 grand to them.
Yeah,
if they need it.
Yeah,
and James comes back.
Yes, yeah.
And it's all good. Everything's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean the auditor's probably still like, you should still probably go to jail, but somehow you've come up with the money, so I don't really know.
He puts money in as well.
I know. It's Christmas. It's a Christmas movie.
The guy who's got the warrant tears it up.
Yeah, it's a lovely ending.
Yeah, it is, and you again, James Stewart's face is just so wonderful as he takes in all these everybody's love and everybody that's come to help, and of course you get the little trinkling of the bell, which
we forgot about that in the bar. Is the every time a bell rings.
Yeah, every time the bell rings, an angel gets.
Because I love when they kick him out. Nick's doing the till constantly. He's like, "Look at me! I'm giving out wings."
I'm giving out wings. So apparently the film has 42 bell rings.
I'd never counted, but that seems more than I thought, actually.
Yeah. So every time you watch that movie, 42 angels get out.
Actually, I guess like every shop door has a bell on it.
Yeah.
Every till, there's bells at the start.
Yeah,
42 though, that is a lot.
Yeah.
It's cool though. So, God, how shit was Clarence? All these bells going off all these years. Never him.
Yeah. Yeah. So Zeus says about that every time a bell rings, he gets his wings, and there's a
Harry toasts George. Harry turns up and he's like, "Hey, the richest man in town."
And there's the copy of Tom Sawyer that Clarence had.
Yes, of course.
Thanks him for his wings.
Yeah, he's got a handwritten note, saying, no
man who has
is a failure who has friends.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he knows, obviously, as he hears the bell.
Yeah.
That Clarence has got his wings, and he says, "Atta boy, Clarence," as the film comes to an end.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful life.
A wonderful movie.
A wonderful movie. I honestly, it's such a joy to watch every year. It does such a wonderful job of building character.
Yeah. Before
you get to the fall, and before you get to the supernatural element.
Yeah.
You're so invested, not just in George, but everyone.
Yeah, it shows you everything you need to know. It shows you all of the relationships. It shows you all the, every part of the sort of, the town that he's involved with. It's beautiful. It's a beautifully done, and Frank Capra was he's supposed to be the master of schmaltz, but I mean, it kind of is, but it's just so perfect.
It is, yeah. It really is. It's. I mean, there's a reason that this is a must-watch for a lot of people at Christmas to this day, and that includes people that I know that don't generally watch black and white movies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know we do, obviously, frequently. But there are people that won't, and even they will watch this movie.
Yeah,
it's like I remember my ex hated black and white movies, just couldn't watch. Well, didn't hate them, just couldn't watch them, couldn't get on with them. Yep. But she was like, "This is the one movie that she makes an exception for."
But believe it or not, my wife hadn't seen this movie until last year.
Oh wow! Did she? How did she find it?
She loved it actually.
Right.
She,
Yeah. Because you wonder, because you grow up with something, you wonder how
like as I've said before, my wife does not watch black and white movies. She just can't do it. But she did love this one. She did, and I think it does all hinge on Stuart. Stuart is such a. I mean, he was one of my favourite actors anyway. But he was so what. This is just. I think it is his best performance.
Hard
and even
to argue.
He said, this is his favourite character that he played. I think his favourite movie that he was in was Harvey, which is one of my favourite movies. Also, that movie. I watched that movie when I was a kid. And that I ended up with Harvey as my imaginary friend too.
Yeah.
But he's just so wonderful in this movie, and it's because of his experiences. Really did add to his performance. It shows, all completely. It's all up there on the screen. It all shows, just how wonderful an actor he was.
Yeah, and I think, top to bottom, the cast here are
all great,
fantastic,
all wonderful. Donna Reed was wonderful. All the sides are great. I mean, Lionel Barrymore is the over the top bad guy. He's fantastic.
Oh, he's great.
And in a weird thing as well, because there's a lot of people that don't like this movie for one reason, and that's because Potter doesn't get his comeuppance.
I don't. Right, I was thinking about this specifically as I watched this yesterday. Potter doesn't get his comeuppance, and I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it because the victory is that George isn't hated. The town love him. Potter has lost because all Potter ever knows is money, and he's going to die soon anyway. He must be ancient. He's an ancient, bitter old man who will die alone with no one loving him because all he ever cared about. He's Scrooge gone wrong. He's Scrooge without the turnaround. Yeah. And, he'll get killed by cheese or whatever, or a glob of mustard or whatever the line is. So no, I think he does get his comeuppance. He gets his comeuppance because above all else he wants to see George disliked like he's disliked and fail.
He does get away with it, and he does get $8,000 for nothing. He does,
but then he's got more money than God anyway. It's kind of irrelevant to him. I think the money, the $8,000, probably didn't matter as much as seeing George fail.
It's actually an anomaly in movie.
It is, yeah, you're right.
Because of the Hays Code, this part of the Hays Code said that any criminal in a movie should have his comeuppance. He should not get away with it. They should be shown to it. And he gets away with it.
I think you could argue
what you said is right.
Yeah.
He doesn't win. He does.
You're right. He does get away with the crime.
Sad old fucker.
Technically, does get away with the crime. You're right.
You don't see that. It's not on screen. His comeuppance isn't on screen.
No.
But there is a 1980s sketch from Saturday Night Live.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's on YouTube. It's really funny. It's introduced by William Shatner, who was obviously the host of that episode.
Yeah.
And he basically says, "Oh, we've just found the missing ending." From
Amazing.
And Dana Carvey is George, and he does a wonderful impression. And basically, what happens is they discover that Potter he's got the money, so they all go round as a mob and they basically beat him to death.
I'm gonna have to find that now. That sounds fantastic.
It's on YouTube. It's great.
That's really good.
Really funny. And this movie as well. It's been remade a couple of times with
yes, yeah.
Which and I haven't seen the TV version that was made where I think they gender swapped George.
Okay.
And
I just think it's one of those like the
Orson
original.
Welles plays Potter in that version, which I thought was quite interesting.
That's quite good casting.
Yeah.
I just think the original's so perfect.
Yeah.
It's like if someone remade Forbidden Planet for me, I'd just be like, no. The original's perfect.
Well, I mean, there are sort of remakes of Forbidden Planet?
Well, there's yes,
That in itself was
vaguely,
a version of The Tempest, isn't it? Sort of, really. So.
kind of.
But yes, there are lots of movies which never should be touched, really, and even when they are, it's like, well, it doesn't matter because those movies exists, but who watches those every year?
But it's like when the Wolfman remake came out. I watched that a couple of years ago. It's the first time I ever watched it because I was like, I love the original. I just don't see a need. And it's not that I dislike the remake or I'm going to hate on it. It's just, what's the point?
It is a terrible movie.
Yeah, it is terrible. But but I loved the original, so I never really bothered.
Yeah.
I was never that bothered to see it.
There's even a movie which is like a kind of sequel about Clarence.
Oh, really?
Younger guy playing him. Yeah, apparently, like getting his wings made him younger, and it's.
Oh,
I've never seen it. I kind of don't want to, but it sounds bloody awful. I think it is just called Clarence, but
it does sound terrible.
Sound bloody awful. So yeah, there's even there's a few sort of remakes out there, but I don't see the point of just stick with this. It's just
there's nothing to change here.
Almost perfect, beautiful movie.
I think so. I think it's
which
wonderful.
Again, like many of the movies we've covered, didn't make money initially. It was sort of overshadowed by one of the other movies at the time, and it just failed. I think Capra himself, he lost $500,000 on this movie.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until later that it started getting, with all the channels showing it, and it just became a complete staple of everybody's, Christmas, really.
Yeah, it is mine. That's for sure. And a lot of people I know. So, in any case, well, first of all, Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you for listening. For the last, well, I would say for the last year, but I guess we've got one more to go.
Yeah.
Are we doing a standard episode next week, or are we doing our top 5?
Top 5 is usually for the new year, I guess. So
standard episode next week?
Standard episode, I guess, yeah.
Cool. My watch list will probably be older films from 2023 because I need to catch up. See what I haven't seen, but that'll be cool because I guess I've seen some. You've seen some.
Our last-ditch episode, year's last-ditch episode.
Our last-ditch episode. They make it sound so appealing. This is our last-ditch episode.
I meant our last-ditch effort for the year to cram in as many movies as
it could be quite interesting because I guess you'll probably end up seeing stuff that I've seen, and I'll end up seeing stuff you've seen. Mm-hmm. We can have a bit of a chat about that, bit of a chilled out post-Christmas, pre-New Year, and then I guess the one after that will be our top 5, and then we'll start anew in 2024. Jesus, this year's flown by. But yes, Merry Christmas, everybody, and hope you all have a great one, and watch It's a Wonderful Life, and Muppets Christmas Carol, and Gremlins, yeah, and Home Alone,
and Die Hard.
We're gonna go now, and Long Kiss Goodnight, and Batman Returns. Anyway, yes, take care. Sorry, you were going to say another one. This could go on all night.
No, we're done.
Okay. Take care, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.